Good day, Brittle Planet listeners. This is Eric Peterson in Salt Lake City, and today we are joined by Bill Hudson of Northtail. How are you doing today, Bill?
I'm doing great, Eric. How are you, man?
Good. Where are you joining us from?
I'm here in Orlando, Florida.
I knew that's where you were because I knew we'd talked before, but I just knew by the tank top and everything, man, you had to be someplace nice again.
Yeah, yeah. It's finally nice because it's been unbearable. You can't even breathe during the summer here.
Yeah.
You know, and having to be stuck at home in the summer in Florida really, really sucked.
So how are things down there overall, though?
It's good, man. It's good. We're very excited to come out to release the album because it's been. Not only did it take forever to be done, it also there was all kinds of delays because of COVID. We delivered the album 6 or 7 months ago, and it's only coming out now in
Wow.
November. Yeah, so it's been a thing. I listen to it every single day. Um, and then myself, of course, I have some shows with Doro Pesh coming up in Europe. So that's the other side of my career. So things are starting to get busy again, I'd say.
That's good. We talked a little bit about a year ago, I guess it was, about we talked about Welcome to Paradise, and here we are little over a year later, talking about Eternal Flame. So things have changed significantly in that year or so. Can you give us an update on personnel changes in Northtail?
Well, yeah. The only personnel change that we had is we unfortunately had to change singers, which is
Hmm.
by far the worst thing that can happen for a
Yeah.
band. Especially a band like us, because so Northdale at the beginning, it was meant to be my solo project, and Christian was just gonna sing on it. And then when he came in, I decided to turn it into a band, and we kind of became a band. You know what I mean? We wrote as a band, we played some shows and all that. Um, the the problem started when we started writing for the new album. And I mean, a lot of people talk about musical differences.
Yeah.
That's really, really what happened in our case. I didn't have a problem with him as a person. I'm still a fan of his work, but I didn't like his demos and he didn't like mine.
Uh,
Literally, like what I wanted to do was what we did in this album. What he wanted to do, it was something different.
okay.
So, so that's when we parted ways, and I had to audition singers for months, and it did take months. It did take months and months and months of listening to people. I wanted to audition everybody, so from very famous singers all the way to like little kids that do YouTube covers. I talked to everybody, and the singer we ended up with, Guilherme Hirose from Brazil, was actually the very last candidate.
Oh,
By the
wow.
time he contacted me, I already had a decision made. I was actually in between two European singers that I really like, both of which are like more famous than the band, if you ask me. But um, I was gonna choose between these two guys, and I actually think I even had like a ticket for one of them to fly in. But then when Guilherme hit me up, I thought, everything changed because he had the exact voice quality that I wanted. Like when I write these songs and I sing the melodies, I'm not a good singer, but I sing them, I hear in my head a certain way. I want it to sound like that. And this Guilherme, our new singer, he seemed to almost hear it in his head what I was thinking. So that's the main change. Is a rather big change, but the only lineup change we had.
But before you go on, I just want to commend you because I think it's amazing that you took the time out of your day to audition or talk to everybody that auditioned to play for the band. I think that's huge, especially for somebody, even if they didn't make it into the band, just to get that shot and just to be
Yeah.
heard is amazing. And so I commend you on that.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you very much, man. But in a way, it was a selfish thing. I wasn't really being nice to them. I was trying to find the right singer more than anything.
Yeah.
So it was. I did listen to everybody. I talked to everybody too. You know what I mean? It was never. Hey, send me and if we like it, we'll get back to you. No, I talked to all of them. And it was a grueling process, but it worked. It worked out. And we got the right guy.
But I think for anybody that has auditioned for anything or put in a job application, just to get a personal thank you for, or
Yeah.
let's hear what you have. I mean, that's amazing for people, especially on your level, to just have them say, wow, I really I got a chance. I had a chance. So,
Okay. Awesome. Yeah. That I appreciate the words.
yeah. So, Welcome to Paradise was pretty much a straight up power metal, as I like to call it, melodic metal. But Eternal Flame dabbles in some different directions. Was that by design, or did you just happen to be that way?
So first of all, thank you very much for the melodic metal thing, because honestly, that's how I like to call our music too. And I call it power metal just because everybody else does.
Yeah,
Like when you say power metal, you're talking about that sound, that kind of Halloween-ish Stradivarius gamma ray. That's when you say power metal, what people think of. But I never called the genre that. I always just called it melodic metal. Even back in the '90s, in the mid '90s, when the genre was really strong and Stradivarius was out, we just called it melodic heavy metal. So
yeah,
that's how I see our music. I like melody and I like metal.
yeah.
So yeah. And now, as far as the style goes, you also hit the nail right in the head there, because the first one, yes, it was a straight up, and I'm gonna call it power metal just for the sake of argument. Um, it was a straight up power metal record by design. That was by design. I wanted people to hear it and be like, "Wait, is that Hammerfall? Is that Stradivarius? Is that like you can't really pinpoint what band it is, but it sounds like something you may have heard before in the '90s." Now, that was absolutely by design, because I those are my favorite bands. Man, I have a long career. I've been all around the world with some of the biggest metal bands. Doro, Udo Der Schneider, Trans Siberian Orchestra. I've done all this stuff, but none of that was the music that I make.
Yeah.
The music that I grew up with. You know what I mean? So what I wanted to do was just make a record that could have been out in 1997, and people and people would have bought it. That was kind of my concept for Welcome to Paradise. Now, when it came to the new album, I had a few things in mind. First of all, the second album, Curse. Everybody talks about how it's a lot harder to make a second album that's good. And now, keep in mind, I'm older. I'm now 38 years old, so I'm starting my career as a songwriter rather late. Even everything that I've done before was as a sideman. I have to come and learn the music and perform it to the best of my abilities, as opposed to writing and creating. This is the first time, or the second time, I should say, that I'm doing that. So I didn't want the second album to be horrible, and people to remember just the first one. The second thing I wanted was, I still wanted it to be, again, for the sake of argument, power metal. I
Yeah.
still wanted the choruses to be happy, major key choruses, high vocals. I wanted all of that. But what I did want to change was that feeling that I heard it before. Like that was meant for the first album. I wanted to be straight up like that. On this one, I didn't. On this one, I wanted to be like, okay, now I listen to power metal, but I also listen to death metal. I also listen to thrash metal. I also listen to a lot of classical music. So I want to bring in those influences and now create something that's more unique and more my own. You know what I mean? Like,
Hmm.
uh, I'll be the first to agree that the first album is generic, but this one definitely isn't. You know what I mean? There are some songs that could have been on the first album. That too was by design, because I don't want to alienate the fans from the first album.
Yeah. Yeah.
But 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 I also wanted to do something else, something different, because why would you release the same album twice? Like a lot of bands do that, and people will buy it 2 times, they won't buy the third time. So I don't want, I didn't want that to happen. And besides all that, it's very honest. Like on the first album, I had an issue writing exactly what I wanted. Once I got the singer in, because the singer wouldn't sing half of the things I wanted him to.
Okay.
So this time I didn't have a singer for half of the album, and the second half I had a singer that was willing to sing anything I asked him to. So not having that limitation was absolutely fundamental in this album.
So you were talking about when they talk about making the debut album is easy because it's the second one that's the hard one. Would you say it's because your journey up to that first album is essentially your whole life, and then to the second album, it's from the first album to the second album?
Kind of, yeah, kind of. The first album has songs that I wrote, 15 years ago, 10 years ago.
Exactly.
And then that I rewrote and worked. I had a lot of time to work on the first album. The second one, honestly, because of the pandemic, the second one I did too, but it was only about a year. It wasn't my whole life like that. Besides, like the first album too, like as far as I'm concerned, I don't like saying it straight up like that, but it's kind of true. As far as I'm concerned, Eternal Flame could have been the debut album, and then Welcome to Paradise was like a demo, like a very good demo, because like a lot of the songs on Welcome to Paradise didn't go through any sort of pre-production or demo or rehearsal stage. I literally wrote it, and that's in the album. Like the demo, I wrote the demo, and then I played it a little bit better or whatever, and that's how it went in the album. So there's some songs on Eternal Flame that I even consider like better versions of the songs on the first album. So it was definitely the main difference was how long I had to work on it. Luckily, I hate to call the pandemic luckily, but luckily I got to sit at home for a year and a half working on it, because it would be a lot harder if I was out on tour all year.
Oh yeah. So just kind of going off the subject for a second, I'm just curious if you have a favorite second album by a band.
Favorite second album by a band? Oh, a lot. Many. But I mean, you mean the favorite second album as opposed to all other second albums?
Well, no, I mean just like there was Van Halen 1 and then there was Van Halen 2. Is Van Halen, like for me, Van Halen 2 is a great second album, and so is like a Slave to the Grind by Skid Row. I love that as a follow-up album.
That would have been my choice.
Would
Skid Row, Slave to the Grind, yeah. That or maybe Halloween, Keeper of the Seven Keys.
Very good.
Because if you think about the two Keepers as one album, which I think that's what they meant to do at first, that's a great follow-up album, And but Slave to the Grind, dude, Slave to the Grind. See, that's an album because I don't play that kind of music. I don't talk a lot about it.
Yeah.
But like Slave to the Grind, in my opinion, is rock and roll perfection. Like it's like that's where rock music hit the peak songwriting, the peak performance, the peak everything. Everything else after the record for any band just went down. Just nothing is as good.
Yeah.
Slave to the Grind is an incredible record. There's not one note, nothing that I would change about it. It's like it's perfect.
Yeah. Well, I was just curious since we were on that subject, so it's good we got to talk about that.
Yeah.
As far as some of the songs on the album, and we talked about dabbling in different genres, Midnight Bells to me sounds like Slayer meets power metal.
Man, I gotta tell you, it's the third time on this interview that you're blowing my mind by getting what I'm trying to do. Yes, that song was called the Slayer song before I had the lyrics.
Was it really?
Yeah, the demo was the Slayer song. Like the working title until we had the lyrics and the title. Hey guys, did you work on the Slayer song? You know,
That's
that's
funny.
literally yeah, man. That is literally the concept for that song. What would happen if Slayer had a very melodic singer? That was literally what I thought. You know.
So that's where you were going with that song because it turned out just like you would expect it
Yeah.
to.
No, I love that you brought that up with those words. Really, really cool. Yeah. That's the power metal Slayer.
Is there like for another song that I love too is the opening beat to "In the Name of God." And that's one of my favorite songs because I just love that thumping bass. I just love. I'm trying to think. I couldn't think of who I could compare it to, but I just love that opening bass riff.
That's that In the Name of God is one of the songs that I actually wrote a little bit with the band. Because for the album I wrote all of the songs just at home on the computer and send everybody demos. That song and that particular part you're talking about the bass, we were in Japan back in 2019, about to play our show there, sitting backstage, and I started doing that rhythm on the like I had this counter
Uh
with
huh.
with a mirror where my laptop was, and I started kind of like, and I started just doing that like kind of to pass time. And my bass player was sitting, Michael was sitting right next to me. I'm like, hey, why don't you do this on the bass? Like do that with me. We kind of started like messing on that on the backstage room, and he's going on the bass. So I get my guitar and I did the riff too. And at first I was gonna start just with the guitar and then everything else coming in. I'm like, no, that should be the bass. That's that was that was probably the very first idea of any song that came to me on this new album.
Oh wow, wow.
Yeah.
And then what about so another one of the songs I really enjoyed. I'd like to know if there's any special meaning to it. Is "Wings of Salvation."
Absolutely. That's the most, well, maybe not the most, but one of the most special ones. And I would love to talk about that. I love that you asked. First of all, that's possibly my favorite song on the album. And so the story, I need to give you a little bit of a
Okay.
backstory first, if you don't mind. So in Brazil, we grow up learning in school that this guy named Alberto Santos Dumont invented the airplane, right?
Okay.
That's not a theory. That's what every Brazilian knows and learns in school. I had no idea who the Wright brothers were until I moved to America. And then when I did, I remember seeing like back in the day, seeing North Carolina license plates and where you saw first in
Yeah.
flight.
Yeah.
And I was like, what the fuck? No, the airplane was invented by a Brazilian, and everybody knows that. So I started doing research. I'm like, wait, no, 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 no. We are not taught about the Wright brothers in Brazil at all. It's not part of our history books at all. So I'm like, okay, that's kind of fucked up. That's indoctrination. You know what I mean? That's some crazy, crazy Nazi indoctrination if that's the case. If these guys invented the airplane and we think this other guy did. So I did my research, and I started researching about it just because I was curious. Not only was I curious, I would have arguments with my family. I would be like, the Wright brothers invented the airplane. No, who the fuck are the Wright brothers? Anyway, so as it turns out, the Wright brothers did do it first. They apparently flew in 1903 in some field in Kansas City, and nobody saw it. But they kind of catapulted themselves up,
Yeah.
and so apparently that happened first. But then in 1906, only 3 years later, which if you think about it, 3 years later, that's a long time for people not to know. We
It
know who did
is.
it
It
first.
is.
But 3 years later, the Brazilian guy flew around the Eiffel Tower in Paris. So
Oh
the
wow.
whole world saw it. It was on every newspaper. There's plenty of footage of this, like from the time. And so, as far as the world was concerned, at that time, he invented the airplane because
Oh okay.
nobody knew that someone did it first. Now, not only, in doing my research, I found out many things about this guy. He was a true badass. Like he was like a millionaire celebrity at the time. He would like he would throw these big parties, and he liked to be on the press, and he liked to take pictures of people, and he kind of was recognized for it. And then when the war came and they started flying planes on the war, he killed himself
Oh
because
man.
he couldn't bear the fact that his invention was being used to kill people, you
Wow.
know.
Wow.
And while doing this research, I'm like, wow, the world needs to know about this guy, because if this dude was American, there would be movies about him, there would be, like books and everything. And yeah, there's books in Brazil about him, but like it's related to, it's only in Brazil. There's not even that much English information about him.
Yeah.
So I, when I got the singer from Brazil, this was one of the first songs I wanted to work with him. It was that in Land of Mystic Rites, and I remember telling him, like, you are the right singer to work on these lyrics with me because you're from Brazil and you know the story. And even he was like, "What? You mean he didn't invent the airplane?" I'm like, "Well, see, exactly." You know. So it was a good opportunity to talk and to like kind of bond over the fact that we're Brazilian with this guy, with my singer, over this. And
So
it's a
that's
fascinating story, really.
so that's the story behind the song.
Wings of Salvation, yeah, it's about him.
Oh,
It's
cool.
about the inventor. And there's quotes from him on the song. Like one of my favorite lines is "Nothing matters way up here. Look at you down there, so tiny now." Because
Wow.
he used to. That's one of his quotes in Portuguese.
Okay.
When you so it was that this album, unlike the first one, there was a lot of research and meaning behind most of the lyrics.
Do you enjoy that aspect of it, like getting out there and doing research and finding things to talk about that maybe people don't know anything about?
Yes, absolutely. And again, I consider myself a young songwriter because this
Uh-huh.
is only my second album. But my favorite songs are like that, because on our first album, and I think that's a problem with a lot of power metal uh, bands in general. You have great melodies, but like the lyrics end up being words that fit. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So you end up with phrases like, "Oh, for the steel and the fire and the
Yeah.
dragon,"
Yeah.
and I didn't want to do that because that's cheap. I mean, it's not that writing about dragons and steel is cheap. No way. Like when it's done well, Rhapsody, Blind Guardian is great. But when you're just trying to fit words to a melody, that's very obvious.
Yeah.
So, and I think there was a lot of that on our first album too. Even though it wasn't about dragons, there was a lot of things that didn't make sense. There was a lot of things that he didn't want to. He thought the lyrics were, like, that's too deep. I just want to talk about heavy metal and all that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was frustrating to me on the first album. So on this one, I'm like, no, every lyric will have its special meanings, and we'll do research and I mean, lyrics are not just this thing that have to be there. The
Hmm.
music should represent the lyrics.
Yeah. So I'm just curious, since you've worked with other artists and you've played like Endoro and played with Udo, and as far as songwriting goes, are there certain things that you've learned by playing with them musically and vocally that you
Oh,
adopted yourself?
yes, absolutely, absolutely, to an incredible degree, to a degree that I don't even notice. Like,
Huh.
um, I have. I mean, I can't come up with any specific examples now, but
Yeah.
there's several examples on this album when I wrote a part and then I'm like, where did I get this from? And then oh wait, that's that Accept song. Like one
Yeah.
example I do give all the time. Like Accept does this thing where after every chorus they go back to the intro riff on a different key. you
Okay.
know they do that a lot, and I started experimenting with that too because I would never do it otherwise, just because I learned 50 Accept songs, and now I see that happening a lot.
Yeah.
And definitely the Trans-Siberian Orchestra found its way on as an influence in Wings of Salvation. That whole break in the middle, the Beethoven
Hmm.
part that I made the metal version, that concept came from the Trans-Siberian Orchestra from working with them.
That's, I
So
mean, that's interesting that even though they're not your songs and it was just something you learned to play, that influenced how you write your own stuff.
Oh yeah, of course, because the only other way that I know how to write is basically copying songs that I like.
Yeah,
Like so,
yeah,
so, like "Shape Your Reality," the song on the first album, probably the most well-known song. That could be "Eagle Fly Free." That could be "Carry On." That could be a lot of songs like that because I was just copying the songs that I like.
yeah.
Now I'm thinking more as a songwriter. I'm like, okay, well, this death metal band, this Morbid Angel song has this part here. It's not necessarily power metal, but I like the way it happens here, so I'm gonna try
Hmm.
this here.
Oh, nice, nice. So I switch gears and kind of go to ask you, what can we expect from North Tail for the next year? I mean, touring, how does it look? We kind of dabbled in
Well,
that a little.
yeah, unfortunately, we just had our first ever tour canceled. We were supposed to go to Europe with Unleash the Archers, and
Uh-huh.
that tour fell through this weekend. So
Yeah.
that's not happening anymore. Next year we have confirmed Prague Power USA in Atlanta.
Nice.
I think we're playing June 2nd, and we're working on festivals and touring for next year. But as you probably know, a lot of the festivals are just like taking their lineups from 2021 and using it for the
Yeah.
next year.
Yeah.
So we're having a hard time getting on those, but we have a few offers. So there's a couple that I can't say yet because we haven't
Yeah.
signed the contract. But we're looking at festivals and touring. If things go my way, this will be a full time touring band.
Nice.
Like this is
Nice.
not meant to be a studio project or anything like that.
Do you see I know for the most part most melodic power metal bands are more popular in Europe than they are in the United States, but do you see a chance that you may get some US coverage?
I'm trying. This interview is part of my attempts.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm trying because here's the thing, man. I I was in a melodic power metal before on Metal Blade in 2006, right?
Yeah,
And, it was called Celador. I don't know if you ever heard Cellador.
I
We
have.
did a record in 2006, and that band got some very very good coverage in the U.S. at the time. We were on MTV Headbangers Ball. We toured with Bullet for My Valentine. We toured with
Nice.
all these bands that are not power metal that we toured with, you know. And at that time, things worked out. The only reason that band had to break up is because we were idiots. Like the people in the band didn't know what the fuck we were doing, and we threw away a huge opportunity. So it's not like power metal doesn't have an audience in the states. I think that there's not enough coverage.
Yeah.
So if we can get enough coverage with it, I don't see why the style, especially because like you know when it comes to American metal, how much heavier can you get? How much more can you tune your guitar down?
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
much more can you talk about how they cannot bring you down and you're gonna fuck up shit in the pit? Like that. Those subjects are kind of tired,
Yeah.
and I feel that if there was something different, there could be a response. Now we are obviously much more popular in Europe, and even more so in Japan, where we've already been to. So I really, really hope, man, that this year things change. Unleash the Archers is doing a fantastic job in America.
Yeah,
I
they
went to
are.
their show in Orlando here, and it was sold out. And
Nice.
that's a power metal band. No growls, no deathcore, nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing like that. Just a straight up metal band selling out. So I don't see why not. I would love to, man. I think it's kind of crazy when I talk to some American friend of mine that knows a lot about metal, but has no idea who Gamma Ray is.
Yeah.
It's like, it's a very odd thing. It's like, wow, Witchfinder General, Coroner, but you don't know Gamma Ray. It's like, that's a very common thing here.
Yeah.
And I would love to be the one to change it.
That would be awesome. It would be great to have us break out of our shells.
Exactly. And it's happened before. It's happened
Yeah.
with Dragon Force.
Yeah.
The only thing is Dragon Force, again, it's like in America, everything seems to be an attraction. And so Dragon Force was kind of a gimmick when it came out. Like, it was like, oh, look at the guys playing so fast, like video games. I don't know that the people were so much into the songwriting at that time. Of
Yeah.
course, the fans that lasted till today, obviously they like the band. So it's happened before. I don't see
Well,
why it couldn't.
another one that I think along the same lines is like Evanescence. I mean, there was a great female fronted band that had that symphonic sound. They're a
Yeah,
great band, but there's so many others like that are out there that are just as good or better.
exactly. Like, well, I think that a band like Within Temptation would never have gotten so big if it wasn't for Evanescence getting big first.
Exactly,
I mean,
exactly, exactly. I mean, like within Temptation, you've got all those bands like Nightwish and stuff like that, and that stuff.
yeah,
But people in America, they just see Evanescence and they think that's all there is.
yeah. It's very metal is very corporate in America. It's very
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah,
It's very, very metal in America doesn't work any different than the pop world. It's just
exactly.
it's the same thing. It's the same. This is why, like, sometimes when I see like American metalheads be like, "Oh man, I just hate all that pop music," and I go, "Yeah, you listen to Asking Alexandria, all right? You don't listen to One Direction." It's
Yeah,
it's very corporate. It's very this is what metal is, so you buy this. So I mean, it sucks. You either play the game or you don't. And
exactly.
I'm not gonna play the game, but I hope they'll like us.
You hope that they'll adapt to your game.
Exactly. And if they
Yeah,
don't, it's fine too. There's other 125 countries to play in.
exactly, exactly. Well, Bill, I appreciate your time, and it's been great talking to you. Everybody, pick up Eternal Flame. When is did they push back the release on it?
No, no, still November 12th. The vinyl is gonna be, I think, around January, but the
Okay.
CD and digital November 12th. The first single is October. No, the next single is October 22nd.
Okay. Yeah, everybody pick it up or when it comes out because it's a great album. I listened to it through and through and I'm enjoying it thoroughly. So,
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so
y-
much for the opportunity, my friend. It's
yes,
great to be
yes,
here.
yes. Thanks for your time.